is Benji Warrior. You're listening to Authentic Warrior Radio. It's a podcast devoted to authenticity, resilience, and communication between diverse and passionate people. Thank you for tuning in.
Hello, home people. It's Benji Warrior here. Of course, you know that because you just listened to my intro and I said, hey, this is Benji Warrior. Anyway, I'm hanging out here with Rizzle, J Quizzle, June Yizzle.
Yeah, I'll go for that.
It's Brian Rodney Jaquish Jr. You're gonna hear him in a future episode, in the not too distant future, with Ron Ray Mizzle, who you heard in episode 26. Just a quick reminder, if you're interested in supporting this podcast, an easy way to do that is go to iTunes, subscribe, rate it, and review it. Another way that you can do that is to subscribe on Patreon. I have different tiers of pledge levels that you can pledge to. Those tiers come with different levels of rewards. I have one subscriber at the highest level, and that subscriber is Molly the Cop. I do a shout out to everybody who subscribes on Patreon on every episode. So, Molly the Cop, Mike Rowe, and my sister Megan, and Matt Hagum, thank you very much for supporting Authentic Warrior Radio on the Patreons. Speaking of Molly the Cop, this episode features Molly the Cop. And one of the rewards that Molly the Cop gets for her high-level subscription to Authentic Warrior Radio on Patreon at www.patreon.com/Authentic Warrior Radio is a serenade once a month on this podcast. Well, see, Brian Rodney Jaquish Jr. and I happen to be Molly's friends. IRL, I coach Molly and Brian, and we kick ass in the gym on regular bossies. So, Brian's hanging out with me here, drinking some beers. I'm trying really hard not to. It's really freaking hard. And we got a wild hair up our ass and decided to record a song for Molly. So, enjoy... what's the song called again? It's an amazing, wonderful, excellent, exquisite Alice in Chains song from the Unplugged album. It's called Nutshell. Doy up big time. Like, doy. No doy. How is doy the same as no doy?
It's...
Doy and no doy are the same thing, except one is a negative and one isn't. How's that? What is that? Duh and no duh. I'm going to speak with some philosophers and try to understand the logic on this one. Meanwhile, enjoy the song and the episode with Molly the Cop.
lead guitar and vocals, and Benji Warrior on backup vocals and falsy. Next up, we've got Molly the Cop and Benji having a conversation. Stay tuned.
Yo, I'm sitting here with Molly the Cop. Molly the Cop is one of my greatest friends and supporters of this podcast. You hear me do a shout out to her for her Patreon subscription. She's done more than most people know to make this podcast possible. So, thanks, Molly the Cop. What do you want to talk about today?
Fear and joy.
What about them?
I'm just going to dive right in. A lot of my life I spent living in fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of not making a difference, and making decisions based off fear of what could go wrong or overanalyzing. Seemed to be a common trend. I kind of inherited it. It was shown to me by my parents as a way they were motivated to make decisions about their lives, about their finances, about their jobs, about what they invested in, spiritually, mentally, friends. It just seemed to be a common theme to not try new things based on fear of getting hurt, losing, not having enough money. It was a common theme.
How's it been a common theme in your life?
Well, starting out, I was afraid of being alone, so I married the first person that dated me and the first person that asked me to marry him. Great guy. Didn't work out. I didn't try for anything big. I didn't go for any big career, big goals. I just took a safe, easy path, part-time jobs, being a really great spouse, the best of my ability, even though I wasn't really happy with it. Living the life that, quote unquote, you should live, or the common, normal, good life. Picket fence. It didn't really turn out that well. Never found it satisfying. I did a lot for everyone else, didn't really take care of me. There was a lot of fear in being on my own or going for a big career or really trying to do anything and possibly failing at it, or till it pretty much limited everything in my life, and I was miserable, but put on a brave face for everyone. I think a lot of people can relate to that, of showing that everything's good, everything's great, life is good. There's a fake positive that people can do because they really want to be positive all the way down, but they're not, and they don't know how to fix it. Mm-hmm. I feel like I hit on a huge amount of topics in a short amount of time.
The idea is that people put on a face not just for everyone else, but for themselves too. Definitely.
Life and the huge amount of years that we have, it can be really daunting to look at that and go, what am I going to do with this time? Or what am I going to accomplish? What do I really want to accomplish? So that when I'm older, I don't look back and regret. But that can be so daunting that you submerge yourself in everything else to distract away from it, even if they're valuable things like your family or huge hobbies you enjoy or work, and just immersing yourself in these other things so that you don't have time to think about that potential or how big things could get or how much you could do. It's so scary. I hid from it for a lot of years in relationships, in hobbies, in alcohol, in bad choices, because it was just too scary to actually sit in the silence and face the possibilities, the future, the present, the moment. It's something I do now. It's still scary. But even at 37, I do feel regret for the amount of years that I spent with my head in the sand, thinking I could just not ever have to face living up to a potential or being my true authentic self.
What's the connection between that and joy?
Living with fear, living in fear, living by fear robs you of that all-encompassing feeling all the way to your core that makes you feel alive. Transitioning from that took a lot of steps, basically all of 2018, just step by step. There's so much freedom in going past that boundary that the mind has always set. Moving past that and seeing how much I'm capable of doing, it is intense joy. And I say joy because it goes all the way to the core of me, all the way to my fingertips. It is an energy that is like just a bonfire. And I say joy because it spreads. I use the word joy because using the term happy is overrated and misused so much.
You said it spreads.
I say joy because to me, with me, joy is a radiating bonfire of passionate energy that just, it does spread. I've heard it from my coworkers. I've heard it from friends. I see it when I'm in a group. When I am my outgoing, fearless self, it is contagious and other people pick up on it, and the energy of the group will shift and just rise up, and they are more joyful. They are more open and connected. They're willing to be vulnerable. They're vibrant. And especially at my job, I have coworkers tell me they see that I'm on the list to work, and they're actually really happy to be at work because they know that with me being there, they're going to have a good day. There's going to be great energy. There's going to be laughs. It's positive. They're excited to see me because of what I bring. And that isn't something I've always felt.
It seems like you stoke that fire for other people, and stoking that fire for other people does something for you. Is there a way that you stoke that fire for yourself without other people?
Yes. There are many ways that I do that. A huge part of what keeps me going and fueled is genuine connection to people that care about me, know my whole story, and accept me. The conditioning class is a huge part of that. 3 times a week for basically a little over a year. Exercise is super important. Time alone is important. Time in nature is very important, very grounding. This last year, I've learned how to take care of myself better. I've been totally single, living on my own most of the time, and I got some really good roommates. I have my space organized. I have a couple of very close friends, including a very profound best friend that challenges me on just about every level on a regular basis. And
who's that?
Well, you. And a gym group that has the right mix of authoritative leadership, creativity, a great team, hard exercise, and every single class, the most valuable thing I get out of it every time is I push myself past the limits that I always used to have. They're still very familiar of what I thought I could do physically or how much I could do. And every class, I go to it a little, all right, we're going to do it again. This is a little intimidating, and we're going to do it again.
I was going to say the look and the body language right now that you're displaying is apprehension.
There's apprehension each time because I wonder if I'm going to be able to do it. There's that old belief that's right there each time. This is going to be intense. Are you going to be able to handle it? Are you going to be able to make it through? Are you going to do good enough? And I'm like, I do awesome every time. I push myself past limits each time. And when you get past the limits that your mind and body has set for yourself and you do just a few more reps or you hold out a few more seconds, you're in a brand new space of, wow, this is freedom. That's joy. And doing that 3 times a week continues to refresh that knowledge and understanding and excitement that I've pushed limits in so many ways. And I continue to, and I can do this. And it just continues to fuel this joy of freedom and potential on what can I do with my life and all this other space. Because I've accomplished so much here. It's like I am so free. And I never really thought I was.
So when you talk about freedom, is freedom synonymous with joy for you? What's the opposite of joy?
Despair.
Can you find despair in freedom?
Yeah. In the loneliness of it, potentially.
So how have you found joy? How have you gotten to a point where you find joy?
It's not constant. I have my up times and my down times pretty regularly. But in those times, I recognize feelings are just feelings. They can pass really quickly. I will feel better only one workout away from a good mood. I have my gratitudes. I have my appreciation for everything I've been given, my career, my home, my ability to support myself, the friends I have, the things I've been able to do. I sit with it. I sit with the darkness. And there are some valid points. I am on my own. I am single, for instance. That's a major thing that a lot of people run from, and I ran from for a long time. But in my room, I have pictures all over the walls from this last year. All the conditioning camps, pictures of me, pictures of friends, pictures of great moments. And when I feel like crap, when I feel bad, even though I'm feeling bad, I see all these things and I know that the feelings aren't going to last. But I accept that I feel like crap at that time for whatever reason. And I journal about it, or I think about it. I let it exist until it fades on its own. I don't try to run from it. I don't try to muffle it, hide it. I'm done doing that. And when that passes again, I'm left with looking at myself and going, you just went through another dark time and you came out the other side and you handled it great and you're a badass. And with that, my spirits just lift up again. I don't know what happens, but I just feel alive and I feel happy and I feel joyful all the way down to my core. And I'm like, let's go do stuff. And then that fuels it again. And the reaction I get from people when I give my time, my energy, a smile, a genuine smile to a stranger, and they smile back. In that split second, they're like, oh, and then they smile back. That connection fuels me and makes me feel vibrant. And it's beyond happy. It's alive and purposeful. Useful?
So you talk about 2018 and how powerful that was for you. There's so much there that I want to go into. Part of it is I want to know what your process was externally and internally in that time that helped you reach the point where you're at right now. But also, I want to know what prepared you to start taking those steps in the first place. Why is it that when 2018 dropped, you were ready?
That is a lot.
So break it down. Which part do you want to talk about first?
As far as a catalyst to what got me ready for 2018, I've had a lot of loss in my life. A lot of rejection, a lot of hurt, and a lot of trauma. Honestly, the initial catalyst was 3 years ago when I felt pulled to be an officer for a bunch of years. My family kind of was pushing me to it also because it's a good career. And I just hid in my relationships and made my life all about someone else. And finally, it just, like kind of an annoying noise in the back. I've always kind of been stubborn. I've always wanted to do what the crowd didn't do. And eventually, after being a little mouse in a box, so I call it, for a lot of years, I just busted out. So I put in for this job and got accepted and started the hiring process. And I never lived on my own, never had my own full-time career. I had part-time jobs. And so then I got accepted and went off to academy and went through that 4 months and then came back. And within a couple months, I bought a house, and I had a house and I had a career that was going to financially take care of me for life. And I had a huge amount of authority to use as I saw beneficial to everything and everyone. I felt free in that way. And I got out of a relationship that I didn't really want, and I got single. And I had, for the first time in my life, at 34 years old, my life was mine. I didn't have to worry about money. I had a house, I had a car, I had a job. I had everything. I started filling up my house with all these things I liked. I had the freedom to do what I wanted to. And to some extent, it was still kind of empty because I really didn't know myself yet. Even though I had this job and I was serving people, I didn't really know what I could do with it. I've always sensed there was something more that I'm meant to do, something more on my path that I need to work to get to. Something greater, not immodestly, but just something bigger, more. And it always kind of pushed me. And then I'm like, okay, I have all these things set up. Now let's let's do this. And I had a really unfortunate event happen right at Christmas of 2017, and my grandma passed away the day before Christmas.
2 different events, right?
Yeah, 2 different events. And they shook my world completely down. And at some point, it shook me down and put me back into that place of fear. And it's just in my nature to, when something terrifies me, I'm gonna go after it. And I'm gonna conquer it, and I'm gonna overcome it, and I'm gonna move forward, because I do not like feeling trapped in fear. I do not like that. And as I've gotten older, I don't like it even more. And so I decided to definitely join a gym and get connected to people. Met you, walked into Bellingham MMA and met Hunter, and felt that the place was just great energy and comfortable, and I wanted to go there. Ended up signing up for your class. I didn't realize it was your class. And I was like, I'm gonna get into badass shape. And
You didn't know it was my class?
I didn't know it was your class.
I could have sworn that you messaged me about it beforehand and asked me how to sign up, and I said, just go into the gym.
And I went into the gym and I signed up for it, but I didn't realize you were the coach of it.
Oh.
I thought it was just a class at the thing that you had mentioned, and when we had talked about it, I felt like that was my path. Like, I saw the light going on that path, and I'm like, I'm gonna do that. That feels like where I need to go. And so that started 2018, not in the worst shape of my life.
So funny, you had no idea that I was the coach.
No, I didn't. And then, like, I texted you that, and I was like, I just signed up, and you're like, cool, it's my class. And I'm like, oh shit.
You didn't know me very well yet.
No. And I was like, well, I'm not backing down. I'm like, okay. And it was intimidating as heck. I'm like, I'm joining an MMA gym. I've never fought anybody. I've never done any of this. There's people in white robes and different color belts throwing each other all around the place. And
robes? Come on.
That's what I thought they were.
Pajamas.
Yeah. And
she's talking about jujitsu.
Hunter is such an amazing human being. The whole place is full of them. It's just...
Yeah, we're really fortunate to all have each other there. It's a wonderful place. But, it's like we go there and we put our hearts into what we do, and that creates this vortex of energy. And, not to sound super hippie, but I feel like we show up and we put our hearts into everything we do, and that is what creates the identity of that place. And that identity attracts more people that are there to put their hearts into what they do, and who are heartfelt and decent people. More than decent.
I finally understand the term gym fam.
You were the first person I ever heard say that. Oh, no, that's not true. Laura says gym family.
Yeah. I got plugged in there, did the first session. I threw myself into that. I was so wrapped up in my job. I had the job, like I said, I had all these things set up. And it was super apparent when I got there to you and everyone else. I did not know who I was outside of this job, because the job was the first thing that got me out and actually on my own, living my life alone.
To me, it seemed that you were neglecting everything that you were before you had become a cop. And that being a cop was such a huge part of your identity because of what it represented to you. And that it was almost the only thing you knew about yourself.
It was. I know it's cliche to say we grow up and we keep becoming different people and learning about ourselves more, but dang, who I was married or in relationships was nothing like who I was on my own.
Yeah, and
it was empty.
When I call her Molly the cop, it's like an inside joke between us, because I was really open and straight up with her about what I was observing when I first met her. I was like, because she would introduce herself to people, and the first thing she would say is, "Yeah, I'm a cop." It's like, no, you're so much more than a cop. You are Molly. You're an entire person with an entire backstory, and like, you have more to your identity. And no matter how hard you try, or no matter what you do to bury the old version of yourself, that part of you is still there. And it's going to be like needing your attention. It's still alive. You can't bury it. It's still there. And it's always going to be there. It's either going to be happy or it's going to be sad. And if you neglect it, it's not going to be very happy. And so the key is like continuing to build your identity upon everything that you are, and recognizing who you've been in the past and all those things that you're not proud of, seeing all that you accomplished even during that time, all the things that you were going through and where you've come from and how far you've come. Like, it's all that cookie jar that David Goggins talks about. Like, when you're laying there at night feeling like shit about where you've been in life or whatever, what you've how you lived your life before. You said it still bothers you that you lived in fear for all that time. Like, that's what I heard. You can remind yourself of all that you've been through, and that's just an addition to all the things that you accomplished. You say in 2018 you accomplished so much. Mm-hmm. Everything that you went through before that, and your way of processing everything that happened led you to take those steps. 2018 didn't change you. You changed you. You made the choices to do those things. You showed up. Like, you show up for yourself every day in a way that most people don't, and a way that you're able to do because of everything that happened and everything that you did and leading up to 2018. It's not just that 1 year. You don't change your whole life. And I mean, you can change a lot in a year when you're perseverant and balls deep in life. But no, there's so much more going on. You showed up ready to kick ass. Even if you were apprehensive and whatever, you showed up. And you were more than a cop then, and you're more than a cop now. But I call her Molly the cop just to give her a little bit of shit.
I was so awkward and uncomfortable and tense and hypervigilant and so stressed. Now I'm one of the bigger goofballs in the group. I say I'm the most goofball
You've
officer.
always been a goofball. You just had to stick up your ass at first.
Yeah,
You were a goofball then too, dude. You've always been a goofball. You just, like, it wasn't even that far into the boot camp. It wasn't even that far into the conditioning camp that you were fucking interpretive dancing with hand wraps.
Yeah, that was, there's something to be said for enjoying the moment. And when you have NSYNC blasting through the speakers after hours at the gym with your gym class, and everyone's just dancing weird, and you have hand wraps coming off because you were just boxing, I don't know, something happens. and just everyone's dancing, and it's just, that's not what normally happens in a gym, much less a fighter gym with belts on the wall, and we're dancing and singing to NSYNC at the top of our lungs. Still one of the best moments, I think. And there's lots of great moments, but yeah.
If you were writing a guidebook for a version of yourself 5 years ago or so, what would you put in it?
Quit trying to change yourself and just accept how you are. You're a little different, and you are hypersensitive to people, and it's an amazing gift that you can use. And quit trying to flip and change to make yourself normal. There is no normal. If you love yourself, you're going to turn into something amazing. If you keep telling yourself you're crap, you need to change because other people said these same things. It's not how anyone's meant to live.
I would be careful and caution people who have been through trauma, abuse, a controlling family life, who have possibly developed a really reactive way of life, really reactive state of mind, to not rationalize that reactivity by calling it hypersensitivity or empathy. And I'm not saying that empathy isn't there, and I'm not saying that hypersensitivity isn't there, and I'm not saying that that's what you're doing, but I see that all the time. So what's the difference?
That was a huge question.
What's the difference between being basically, what I got from what you said was that you're a hypersensitive person and it can be a powerful tool. So what's the difference between being hypersensitive and using it as a powerful tool, using it as a power tool? What's the difference between being a hypersensitive person and using it as a powerful tool and being reactive?
So if you're a hypersensitive person who picks up on people's moods shifts, just able to feel what people feel, understand what they're feeling, and sense shifts in groups, and kind of like an empath. If you're someone that's hypersensitive, you naturally can be reactive and try to keep everything calm, pacify things, change yourself to try to keep the peace, to try to make things safe, to calm everything. That's being reactive. That's what I spent a lot of my time doing.
And that's the external locus of control.
And it drains the life out of you. But it comes from, you're trying to make a safe environment. You're trying to make people happy so that you're safe. It comes from a survival state. Reactive is not a useful thing. It comes from a survival state. Often there's just high stress.
Would you have told yourself this 5 years ago?
I didn't really even realize it till kind of recently. And oh man, I would. I'm not sure I'd be ready for it. I mean, if your head's so far in the sand, you have to be ready to change. Usually something kicks you in the butt really good, and off you go. Now, especially in the last couple months, but very much more solidly now, what's the opposite of reactive? Proactive?
So that's one of the things people say.
I know I'm just as sensitive, but I'm more solid in myself that I'm not trying to adjust myself down or adjust myself to make other people more comfortable or not cause a confrontation or upset my friend by saying something or being apologetic. It's like, no, I said this, or I feel like I'm being quite rational and I'm not going to cater to everyone else.
And is this you talking to yourself or you talking to the person?
This is me talking to myself.
And that's the internal locus of control. Because you're like, instead of trying to manipulate external circumstances in order to create that safe space for yourself, you're looking inward and arranging things inside of yourself and explaining things to yourself in a healthy way, and having healthy dialogue with yourself to try to learn how to adaptively cope with what's going on around you, rather than trying to manipulate things all over the world outside of yourself to try to find joy.
Like, I'm less concerned if someone doesn't like me. I'm less concerned if someone's having a bad day. It's not my responsibility to make this person in a better mood. That's not my concern. I don't have to worry about that. I
hear you saying that. I also hear you say things about how happy you make the people at work, and one smile to a stranger brightens up your whole day. And
there's a difference between needing to do that or needing to do it out of worry of what if I don't. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference between I'm going to interact with you in a very positive way. Mm-hmm. Or
so one is like you're using paint to cover up the canvas because you're afraid of anyone seeing what you have or haven't done. And one is, or like basically if the painting is your expression of who you are, if it's an expression of who you are and what you are in the world, then the reactive way would be someone comes along and looks at your painting and you're just fucking smearing paint all over the place, like trying to fucking cover it up. You're using paint and it's stolen fucking paint. It's like you're fucking with other people's paint to try to cover up your painting or whatever.
And then checking with them, do you like this? Is this good?
Yeah.
Is
Change
this okay?
the angle of it, see how the light hits it and all that shit. And then the person that you are now is like, instead of using your sensitivity and your kindness to try to win people over, you're like, well, this day, every single day is an empty canvas, and these smiles are my paint, and I'm actually painting a picture that expresses what's in my heart, and I'm just going to show it to everybody, and I don't give a fuck if someone doesn't like it.
Precisely. I also find I'm more comfortable being vulnerable, and that is a vulnerability, to stand next to your own painting and be like, no, this is mine.
Yeah, because you put your heart into that painting and now you're showing your heart to everyone.
And it's a vulnerable state to have someone go, that's a piece of shit. And you'd be like, okay. And it's your opinion. Cool. Bye-bye. In being vulnerable, you also connect to people on a level that doesn't need words, doesn't need understanding. You connect to another human being and they feel that. And that's also, I think, very, not primal. It's something that's overlooked by so many people with the surfacey topics, everything we pile over, just surfacey stuff and unnecessary things that we talk about, unnecessary topics. This is excellent, real conversation. If I try to have these types of conversations with coworkers or even, casual friends, either they may not have a lot to say, or it kind of just doesn't, you just see it doesn't quite reach.
Because they're pulling away or putting a wall up or something, or they don't feel comfortable opening up to that same degree.
Maybe they don't feel comfortable opening up, or maybe they don't know how to open that up. Being vulnerable and steady with it is a much newer development at my work. When I say I give back to people, and what I get in return also just fuels me. It is that connection. If you meet people that don't speak your language, have never been to this country, and are rolling up in a vehicle to a brand new world that looks terrifying with all these people with guns, and a lot of them look really serious. And then there's me with a blonde mohawk and a big smile, and I maybe know a couple of words to say hello, and I'm polite and I look them in the eye and I'm genuine with them. The way they light up and chatter to each other and look at me and just they're just, this is their first impression of a huge country and people, and I'm courteous and I'm confident. I'm there for them. That's not something they expected. And that's not something any other regular, common, frequent flyer encounters either. It almost startles them into, this is a human treating me like a human. And it's like you can just feel the love and compassion and joy coming out, and it reflects back. And that genuineness comes right back. And it's in that, I say validates me. I don't need it, but I appreciate it. And it goes right back. It's like it's contagious. And it makes me joyful and happy to be there.
You say you don't need it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with needing it. I really don't, because you're living according to your values. You're living with integrity, and integrity is where self-esteem happens.
We all need connection, but I'm pretty darn steady on my own now that if I didn't get that, I wouldn't sink and crash.
How long could you go, though? It's not even just that. I mean, you're going through life day after day, interacting with people, and the way that you interact with people is, this might not be true for everybody. It's true for me, and I'm pretty sure it's true for you. The way that you interact with people is a huge part of your expression in this world. I see life, like I said, as an empty canvas, and I've used that analogy in a lot of different ways. But life is an empty canvas, and every fucking day is an empty canvas. And how I communicate with people, how I connect with people, how I give my heart to people is how I paint. It's a huge part of how I paint. It's not the only way. But I need to live according to what I believe is right. And how I do that is the decisions that I make. The decisions that I make reflect my values. And if I make decisions that are not in alignment with my values, then I'm making decisions outside of integrity. And I don't feel good about who I am when I do that. You say you don't need it, but I'm pretty sure that we all need to live a life that feels purposeful to us.
Yes.
To not feel that we're wasting our lives.
Yes.
It's just it's a pointless existence if you're not doing something precious with it. And painting that picture with all my heart is precious to me. And it seems like it's this similar thing for you.
I need to do more with my life. I need to give back. That is why I think I'm here. That is what I think my path is.
What do you mean give back? Give back in exchange for what?
Give. Interaction, caring, compassion, connection, understanding. It's kind of dorky, but in the last week, the phrase "live your life to make a difference in the lives of others" has kind of circulated in my head, especially in the mornings. It really motivates me to go to work instead of, oh, I have this long shift or I have all this work I got to do. It's like, I'm going to make a difference in someone's life today. Let's go find it. I need to give. Feels good, and it makes me feel solid with myself, with my beliefs, and I feel so solidly on the path that I'm meant to be on. I feel very content where I'm at. I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to do, and I have absolutely no regrets. And in 10 years of doing this, 10 years from now, doing this, I'm not going to have a single regret, and I'm going to be so happy that I threw myself out there and lived. This is living for me.
Where did you discover that? How did you discover that about yourself? Or where might you have picked that up?
100% from my grandfather. 100%. Even as a kid, we learn how to describe our feelings over time. As a kid, I felt like kind of a guardian. I looked out for people. I got bullied. I tried to look out for the people that got bullied worse than me. And being around my grandfather, who was a long-term missionary, when they came home, my parents were going through a rough time, so I stayed with them a lot. And the stillness and the peace and the contentment that my grandfather radiated with his life, with the years he spent in missionary work, and it wasn't just missionary work, it was building things. He was in construction. He built villages and wells and roads, and he gave back his time and energy. He didn't have a single regret. There was nothing about him that was anything other than at peace with where he was at. And he was still doing things for other people. And at the end of the day, he was just so calm. And I envied that because I was an anxious kid and I was stressed out, and I came from a stressed out, tense family. I hadn't encountered anyone that was like that. And I felt very connected to him, like we were cut from the same cloth.
What was his name?
John Reimer. Very, very amazing person. And it's cliche, I wish I had known what I knew now to be able to spend more quality time with him then, but I just was too young.
I definitely feel the same way about my great-grandparents.
What he put into the world with 100% genuine, generous heart, without expecting anything in return. His path always provided everything he needed. They may not have had full bellies, but they never had empty bellies. He raised his family. I was his grandkid. All the way to the day he died. He was still giving back. I never saw him upset. Just a content, radiating, compassionate, warm human. That's me. And I serve in a different way because that's the realm I'm in. I'm really good at it.
What do you mean in a different way? Because of working in law enforcement versus working in the religious world?
Even working in construction in the religious world. The baseline is the same. You care for others, you love others, you give, you serve. Whether it's because of my religion that I do that, the outpouring is pretty the same. It's the purpose. It's why you do it, and it is a need. You live a purposeful life, doing what you believe, and in the end, you don't have regrets. You're content. I want to live every day that at the end of every day, if I died tonight, I'm not going to have any regrets. I'm going to actually living the life that I feel completely happy about. I don't sound happy at the moment, but I am incredibly proud and happy with it.
You don't sound happy.
Well, I'm very mellow, and I've been called stoic.
Who called you stoic?
I don't know. Some guy with headphones on across from me.
I called you stoic?
You did. You called me stoic.
I was probably just trying to speak your language, because stoic, a lot of people misuse that term, and I didn't actually, I can't stand it when people misuse that term. So if I was saying that, it was probably just like trying to speak the language that most other people speak, assuming that you would know what I meant, and I think you did. So what have been some of the more treacherous parts of your journey for the last couple of years? Not necessarily, so it can be treacherous down in the pit of life, or it could be treacherous climbing.
For as vibrant and exuberant and joyful as my life can be, there is the polar opposite that is there. The despair, the depression, the emptiness, the terror of being alone. There have been a lot of times, not so much anymore, but that was the treacherous time. There were a lot of nights where I would pray that I just wouldn't wake up the next morning. It's like, maybe this can be the end of my life tonight. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not suicidal, but please, maybe can this just be it? Can I be done? It's too much pain. There's been lots of events that have just dug my heart out of my chest or stabbed it. A lot of loss. A lot of people that were supposed to be there that weren't there. It's not blame. It just is what I had to rise out of.
Yeah. For people listening, this podcast has really shown me that everybody has stuff that they walk around with that most of us will never know. Stuff that they keep to themselves that they've had to overcome, or that they haven't overcome, that they deal with every day. Just everybody has some heavy part of their soul, and it's usually built up over the entirety of their life, and everybody is resilient. Molly is probably one of the top 5 most resilient people I've ever met because of who she is today and how she lives her life. But not just that, but also because I know what she's been through. And I'm not going to out any of that right now. I'm not going to say any of that stuff on here. You can disclose anything you want to disclose, but that's up to you. But I know, and I've heard your story, and I know that there are other people out there with similar stories who just don't talk about it. They don't open up and say those things. I also know that a lot of those people find me, and I have heard those people find me, and I do hear them, and I hear a lot of that. But of all the things that I've heard, I haven't heard much that, all right, I'm about to make up another word, competes with the heinocity of your previous life experience. Some pretty fucking heinous shit that you've been through for a long time. Mm-hmm. And like in my episode with Katie Gray, I was talking about resilience and how everybody's resilient. Like everybody's a Jeep. A Jeep is a resilient vehicle. But you can put it on a straight, flat, perfectly smooth concrete road, and it'll go a long way. And you can measure the oxygen that it takes in, and the fuel that it burns, and the RPMs and everything while it's driving. And then you can tell another Jeep operator to do that same exact thing, but put them in a mud bog and see how fucking far they get. People are all resilient. It's just really fucking insane to me that you have been through a deeper and longer mud bog than almost anyone I know, and you are who you are. An incredible person. Fucking blows my mind. I know a lot of incredible people, a lot of really resilient people who have been through all kinds of fucking crazy shit, and you would never know because they have transcended so much in their life. They've overcome so much, and they've become something that I'm sure they never thought they could, over and over and over again in their lives. There are a lot of people like that. But the extreme that you came from to the extreme that you're at now is fucking mind-blowing.
Sometimes I forget to look beyond the past week. Sometimes it's difficult for me to see that change, to see the long-term change. There was always, and I think a lot of it came from my grandfather and just my grandfather's house and my grandma. But there was always this hope that things would get better / I know things are going to get better because I know where my path is going. I don't know how, but it's going to happen. And so the light never quite went out. There was always just this gut feeling knowledge that I'm not done yet. And I crashed and burned plenty of times. And even in 2018, I had ups and downs and, getting pretty decent in jiu-jitsu and break my hand. And then kickboxing and working really hard with weight vests and everything else. And then tweaking my back one day and kind of finding out that my back's kind of jacked up and I should kind of not go in a fighting direction and not being able to work out for 2.5 months. So there's been setbacks and I bounced back pretty well, even though it may suck while they're happening, because even now I still see that my path is still going. And as long as my path is still going, I'm still going. And I do try to learn from others. One person in my life who's, very important. Consistently, whenever I interact with them, their first reaction is negative and fear-based. Oh, you're gonna get hurt. Oh, if you get hurt, you're not gonna be able to do your job. You're gonna lose your job. Oh, you already have a back issue. You could make it so much worse. I mean, you could have a lifetime in pain, and when you get older, these things you hurt are gonna hurt worse, and just on and on and on and on, even down to, well, why do you have to go to this gym group? And I'm like, well, these are my friends. Well, they won't be friends with you if you're not in the gym group. Well, make other friends. And I'm like, you really? And I'm like,
I know who you're talking about.
but hearing that, and I'm like, okay, that's the perspective of someone, and I see how they've lived their life, and I know they have regrets. And I know they still haven't pulled their head out of the sand, so to speak. In my opinion, I'm not speaking for them, but that's what I see, because that's still consistent with anxiety. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm not going that way because that's where it leads.
I mean, people have told me that shit my whole life because I've always been doing this stuff. And I've been hearing that my whole life, but the only time I feel like shit physically, the only time I really feel broken and just worthless is when I'm not doing those things. That's when every injury I've ever had starts to flare up. That's when or maybe not every injury, but a lot of the injuries that I've had flare up, and that's when when I get really fucking depressed and dude, my physiology isn't working the way it's supposed to. But those people having made the decisions that they're trying to get you to make their entire lives, mm-hmm. don't have the contrast to know that.
There is, quote unquote, safety living in fear. There is a safety of sorts, not a happy safety, but you'll probably survive this way, not doing these things.
Fear does serve a purpose.
It does.
It's a messenger, and how you interpret those messages and then the way that you make a decision based on the information you get is a responsibility to yourself if you want to live a fulfilling life. Fear is extremely fucking useful and valid. It's just that if you live in a way that is reactive to fear versus actually trying to understand what that messenger is telling you and why, and then making decisions based on it. Because the messenger of fear doesn't give a fuck about what you're missing out on. It doesn't give a fuck about the life that you don't live. All it wants to do is freak you out and keep you from doing anything in order to keep you safe. I have compassion for the fearful side of me, mm-hmm. because it sucks to live that way. Mm-hmm. And I think of that part of me as a part of me that lives that way. And I have to communicate with that part of myself and be like, what are you telling me? Okay, let's look at what you're saying here. And look at everything else. Mm-hmm. And be like, this is valid. However, this person, this messenger that's speaking to me, is irrationally afraid. So I can't just completely make my decision based on what it's saying. With that said, I make a lot of stupid decisions because I'm actually not really afraid of very many things. I have like 5 or 6 fears.
The most useful tactic I've utilized is sitting with it. And that realization came from watching After Earth with Will Smith and his son.
After Earth?
After Earth. I think it's called After Earth. They crash land on a planet.
What the fuck? This sounds like an amazing movie.
It's amazing. Maybe I shouldn't spoil it.
No, I'm probably not going to watch it because Will Smith is a Scientologist, so...
So in it, like his son is fearful. His son is not as brave as he is. He's young. So Will Smith gets hurt, so his son has to go out. Oh man, if I'm missing up 2 movies, I hope I'm not. Anyway, so there's these creatures that were created to hunt and destroy humans. And they literally smelled the fear. They were blind to everything, but they felt your fear. So if you felt fear, they could find you. I don't want to spoil it for other people, but the concept...
Don't do that.
Anyway, so if you watch this movie, at the ending, you're going to understand how I realized I needed to sit with fear and let it pass. And that's how you beat it.
Well, that's, I think, most of the unpleasant feelings that we experience. It's like that cliche thing, since you like those. The whole cliche saying, the only way out of it is through it.
Yeah.
It's fucking true. And you know what? You never actually get out of it. That's the thing about life. You're never out of it.
No.
It's going to happen again.
You're going to have to face it again.
Every time I've ever been like, oh man, I'm out of it. It's like right around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
It's the human experience. And a huge part of it is, like you were saying, not trying to change yourself, but accepting yourself as you are. Being like, okay, I'm not out of it. I'm in it. And I'm in a part of it where my attitude is a little bit different maybe than it was before, and my external circumstances are a little bit more comfortable right now, but I'm not out of it, and that's okay. It says nothing negative about me. It says nothing negative about the world. This is just the experience.
And having a solid support network and solid things in your life that you do that help keep you on track. Priceless.
I don't feel like I really have anyone that keeps me on track other than my kids. I definitely have, for the first time in my life, some solid supportive people. I shouldn't say for the first time. I do a lot of like bitching and whining a little bit, like low-key bitching and whining about how I grew up in my family life and stuff in general. And I stand by everything I've said. It's all true. And especially when I am talking about what my experience was. And I'm not saying what the way things were, but I'm usually pretty clear that I'm talking about how I felt. It doesn't necessarily mean that what I was feeling is what everyone else felt, or what it doesn't necessarily reflect what people's intentions were, whatever. But it does say, it says something about the interactions that happened and something about the lack thereof. And I mean, there was definitely neglect. There was definitely abuse. And there was feelings of not belonging. I had like so many places where I could go at one time or another, usually not at the same time, but I never felt like I could go there. Like I never felt like I could just go there. Like it didn't feel comfortable. I felt like I was invading or imposing everywhere I went. And that's all the places that I lived as a kid. I didn't feel at home. And I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I didn't even feel like anyone really knew who I was. But there have been times in my life when even in that environment, and sometimes it was like hostile, and sometimes it was just really fucking depressing. I'm talking about as a young kid and into my teenage years, and even as an early adult in my early 20s and everything. I just felt really alone. I felt like that the whole time. But even in that, there was the knowing that, I can't say that. I was gonna say there was the knowing that like one or two of those people would always be there for me no matter what if I needed them. But then there were times where I was disillusioned and my heart was broken by that. So no, I can't say that. Being homeless in the snow in 2008 was an eye-opener there. There's like one person in my blood family who has always been there for me. Always will never let me down. And I never asked that person for shit. So I don't want to abuse that. I'm just gonna say it. It's Megan, my little sister. She's one of the other supporters of this podcast.
Megan, you're awesome.
I know she loves me. When shit hits the fan, I don't feel like there's anyone I can call in my family, including my little sister Megan, because knowing that she would always do everything she can makes me feel like extra cautious. The only thing I ever want to have to call her to do is to visit her and spend quality time with her and hang out and reconnect. That came out of nowhere. But yeah, supportive network is really important.
I'm an only child, so it's kind of always been just me or a close friend.
Me and my younger sister separated for the most part when I was like 7 or 8. We saw each other like every other weekend after that. And then when I was 16, she moved to Nevada, Tahoe. And then she moved back when she was 18. But we still didn't like regularly spend time together. When we were little kids though, like we were so tight. We fought all the fucking time. She likes to tell the stories of all the times that I've like been a dick when we were little kids. Just I feel like it's basic brother stuff. Like one time, like I folded her up in a blanket and like I like wrapped her up in a blanket and tried to fold the blanket because I was like, we weren't even that young at that point. We were like, I was probably like 14, but like she was laughing a little bit, so I was like, all right, we're still playing. But like I was giving her shit and I was like, don't do whatever or I'll fold you up in that blanket. And then she did it and I folded her up in the blanket. Then there was like, when we were really little, I think I was like probably 6 or 7, we were out in the car waiting for my mom to come back to the car or something, and we were bickering and we got into some shit and it got physical. And I kicked her in the stomach. Poor thing. She still remembers that and tells that story. She was like 4, I was like 6. And one time I like threatened to smash her over the head with a pop can or something. But dude, here's the fucked up shit, okay? She smashed me in the head with a baseball bat when I was 7 years old. Like a legit full length heavy wooden baseball bat. Louisville Slugger thingy. Like she had like pulled it all the way back over her head and like bared her fucking teeth at me. She did this goofy face. It looked like a fucking like a bulldog with an underbite, and then just fucking slammed that thing down on my forehead. So it went both ways.
I'm kind of glad I didn't have siblings.
We got through a lot of shit together. I remember being in daycare. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and I remember like she just followed me everywhere I went. This was like, I was actually in daycare, like after school daycare. She followed me everywhere. She was like 2 years younger than me, 2 or 3, depending on the time of year, and she just wouldn't go away. I was like so annoyed one day, and I remember just being like, go away, and like I was like whining. The way I remember it, I was kind of like fed up and griping. And then she had pink eye or something. I got dropped off at the daycare, went in there and was doing my thing, and then I realized my sister wasn't there, and like she wasn't following. She wasn't anywhere. I was like, where is she? And they were like, she had to stay home because she had an eye infection. And I felt so alone. It was the saddest shit ever. I was so sad. I was like, I remember just feeling fucking terrified. My little sister wasn't there anymore, and like, I was there alone. I cried a lot.
My parents both worked all the time. And so I was shuffled around to church people's houses to be watched, and I'd stay overnight in strange places and be completely alone in a stranger's house with people who are not my family because my family was unavailable. And they usually didn't even have kids, so it was just like being in old people's houses. It smells like mothballs and everything's lace.
That sounds so unpleasant and uncomfortable. Did you know them well?
Kind of. There's a couple of them that I stayed with them frequently enough. But that's where a lot of that fakeness came from. I wanted to be liked. I was just such a great kid. Look at, when she comes over, she wants to help with everything and do all the dishes. And wow, Molly's such a good kid and so polite. And it's like, they appreciate that. People appreciate that. I'll be safe and loved if I do all these things for people, and it keeps me from being on my own and empty and silent. And I just started becoming a people pleaser. The problem with that is you give away way too much. More nowadays, I'm learning to, I'll give a lot of my time and energy, money, any of them. It's not like one's more valuable than the other. But if I start finding that I'm burning out, I'm learning to catch that ahead of time and not let that happen. I'm not going to give until I burn out and crash. And it takes me a long time to build back up. And I used to give everything into whatever I was doing, to the point of like victimish, martyr-ish. If you give everything, then you're doing good. I mean, you have to be a good person, or you have to really love someone if you're just destroying yourself. I don't let myself do that anymore. I burned out once or twice this year, a little, but not nearly like how I used to. I would burn out, crash and burn, and bail on whatever I was doing. And of course, then I was such a bad person.
This is the way you treated yourself?
Yeah. Well, they told me the people I would bail on, they'd be so upset and they didn't understand where this suddenly came from, and that I was just a crappy, selfish person.
It's because they had become like reliant, probably.
Used to it, or they thought it was, I just couldn't do it anymore.
They had become dependent.
Expectant, too. I ended up feeling used. But you can't put the blame on someone else when I'm the one doing it. I don't let myself to get to that point anymore.
Yeah, I saw a meme that said givers have to have limits because takers rarely do. I think we're all givers and takers. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that accepting things or accepting help, whatever, it took me a long time to learn how to do that. Or it took me a long time to learn how to do it and to be okay with it. Asking for it's even harder. But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with being a taker. It's just when you forget to have gratitude and you start taking it for granted and you forget what it was like before when you were doing those things for yourself, and when you forget how to be supportive of yourself and be self-sufficient.
You got to put yourself first to some extent, and if there's excess, you can give that, share that. You just can't deplete yourself to the point where you no longer burn. It's balance. It's all about learning balance. It's been a great year for that.
So is there anything that you want to put out there before we wrap this up?
It's easier to believe that no one else understands what you've gone through. And that makes it easier not to share, not to try to connect, not to be bold. But you are going to be amazed at how much you have in common with so many other humans. And when you connect and you hear their stories and they hear yours, and you're understood and accepted, there is a massive healing in that and a big shift that can occur. You just have to try.
Is that shift always pleasant?
No, it's definitely not. Definitely not.
Is it always worth it?
Yes, because those are the type of friends that stick.
Here's the thing about shift. I mean, shifting is change, and change is inevitable. It's always happening. And it always requires work, and it always requires processing and adjustment. And when it's really happening, it's like rarely comfortable. And that's life, because change is always happening. If you're not being resistant, if you're not trying to make yourself comfortable all the time, if you're allowing change to happen and growth to happen, you're going to be working. It's going to be work. It's going to feel like work. There's going to be some suffering. Suffering is inevitable too. Like it's all of life requires effort. Mm-hmm. And effort feels like work. If you're doing things that are important to you It doesn't only feel like work, but it definitely still feels like work. It's just work that you're willing to do. It's suffering that you're willing to go through. That's what the word passion means, to suffer. It's what are you willing to suffer for? And life is all about making that decision. What am I willing to suffer for? Every time I get up out of bed, I'm expending energy. I'm getting up from this restful, peaceful, comfortable place to go expend energy and do things that I don't fucking feel like doing a lot of the time. But I'm doing it because there's something on the other side of that is worth it to me. So you might as well make the shift. Put the energy into that. You might as well choose to put that effort and that energy into that shift that's going to bring you closer to your true self, closer to being your authentic self, sharing who you are with other people and making a stronger connection and building trust and opening up more pathways with the people around you and the world around you so that you can give and receive love. And that's it, I think.
The only other thing I would add is that fear and curiosity, there's some similarities in the feeling, and it's a perspective that changes it. Fear of the unknown, I've basically moved it into curiosity about the unknown, and then it turns into a positive.
Well, the fear lets you know what you should be curious about. See, for me, a lot of my life has been about figuring out what I'm uncomfortable with or what I'm afraid of that's holding me back, and then going after it, conquering fears. Overcoming shit like that. That's how I used to have terrible self-esteem, and now I have sometimes good self-esteem. But I used to have totally crippled self-esteem.
Me too.
And it was all about, for me, it was just all about figuring out what fears I'm being reactive to and not living my life because of, and overcoming those fears, retraining myself, understanding, like learning what I'm actually capable of. And what all along, what I was afraid of was an apparition that I was projecting. It was just this world that didn't exist that I was so afraid of. Yep. But the hardest part of doing that for me is figuring out what those things are, because I'm doing everything I can to avoid them. It's so hard to find what you're avoiding. It's like it speaks for itself. It's damn near impossible to find the few things in life that you're really trying to avoid. You're non-consciously avoiding it. It's like an unconscious process. I mean, a lot of times we can't even admit when we're afraid of something. It's
a self-awareness thing. There's deliberately avoiding looking inward, and there is sometimes times we're clueless on it when someone close might pick it up, or counseling. I find counseling exceptionally useful.
I mean, so like reactivity can happen in lots of ways. But I mean, if you think of the fear, the source of the fear as a landmine, and you're walking through a field and there's just these landmines everywhere, and you're like, oh, and you're like running from one landmine, maybe tripping over another one, who knows, and then like you're avoiding all these landmines and you're like freaking out, and you realize they're everywhere and you just don't move. You don't go anywhere. You're just fucking sitting there in fear. Fuck it, I don't need to go there, I'm fine. And you make up all these reasons why you don't need to, and all this shit.
Life's scary. Life is freaking scary.
But some people will be like, oh, well, fuck that landmine, and they'll just go jumping on landmines. And that's just as reactive. But then there's the whole, like, what is this landmine? How does it work? What effect can it have on me if I interact with it in this certain way? How can I dismantle this?
What else can the land be used for?
And what else can this, who knows, there's something maybe in that landmine that is also useful. So like, that's the curiosity part of it. And the fear is like the signal it's like, if I had a detector, it was like a metal detector, and I'm going around in the desert. I don't know why I think of desert, but if I'm going around in the desert and I'm finding landmines everywhere with my metal detector, that little beep, that's the fear. And that beep didn't used to be a beep. It was like, if it were a beep, I heard it all the time because it was haunting. It was like something that I would hear when I didn't need to. It was like always there. Even when it wasn't really there, it was there for me. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like it's like, imagine, it's like being afraid of spiders. And then as a little kid laying in bed at night in the dark, seeing spiders everywhere. But as an adult, I might be so afraid of... I remember being so afraid that I wasn't going to be able to pay my rent. And this is still something that I freak out about. But I remember being so afraid that like several years ago that I wasn't going to be able to pay my rent, that I would lay in bed at night and right as I was drifting to sleep, I would feel wind that wasn't there. And then I would get this vivid image of myself laying on a bare concrete foundation on my bed. Like my bed was just on a concrete foundation and there was no walls, like nothing. I was just like exposed to the elements and like I was on a concrete slab basically. And this was this vision that would come to me, but it would start with like the sensation that I was feeling the cold and feeling the wind. And like I would think about my kids and I'd be like, oh my God, we've lost everything. It was just this feeling. It wasn't even a conscious thought. And then I would have that vision and then that was something that would haunt me. And I still have feelings associated with that on a regular basis. And it's like, that's what fear can do. And it can blind you to all the things that you should have gratitude for. Like, dude, that's not what's happening in my life right now. I have fucking walls around me. I should be, instead of waking up every day freaking out and panicking about how I'm gonna make my life work, I should be like, well, I have everything I need. In fact, I am everything I need. Because yeah, there's some things I don't have. And if I really need them, though, I can get them. If I need food, I can get it. I'm the only thing I need to go get food somehow. Like, that's all I need. If I need to go get a job, I can get a fucking job. If I need to, whatever, all these things, I know I can do it. But there was like times when I didn't know that I could because the fear was louder than reality.
It's hard to stay in the present sometimes and not fall into the past and not trip into the future. But just that was also pretty grounding.
Tripping is a really good word for that.
Future tripping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Staying present, staying in the moment is something I'm pretty darn good at.
So wait, so what was the last thing that you wanted to put out there?
There's so many things. I could talk for hours.
I know. Well, we can do another episode sometime if you want. This one's actually not going to be as long as it is because we've paused so much. I'm going to probably spend 4 times as much time as we've spent recording, just editing out pauses. And when I talk, I say a lot of unnecessary things.
It seems like with me in my life, love, compassion, caring, empathy has been the antidote for a lot of fear and a lot of loneliness and a lot of disconnection and much more pleasant existence. You still have the rough, but there's just a lot more joy. That's all.
All right. And on that note, goodbye, everybody.